All right, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Another Round. Tonight, we are talking to the brilliant Liam Sharp about his ridiculously good new book, Starhenge. And here we all are.
Excuse me.
That's.
I'm on the tail end of the COVID. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm still
That's right. How you feeling?
and spluttering and probably sweating all the way through the thing, but feeling a lot better and definitely ready to enjoy a beer.
Excellent.
There you go.
Well, you look healthy.
Well, it's all smoke and mirrors.
That's good. Well, it's good to see you again, man. Are you drinking the special beer that they have at the pub in your old town?
I'm drinking Love today. I like drinking Love. Sounds weird.
Fantastic.
I just said that on a live stream.
There you go. That's a tasty one.
It is.
Well,
I do love a hazy.
Yeah, me too. I like those. It's so good to see you, man. So you gave me a special preview of your book, Starhenge, and it is remarkable. And you just finished your pre-order campaign, and that went pretty well, right?
It seems to have gone well. I'm very chuffed.
Excellent.
We're going to wait and obviously it's sort of early days, so I'll wait and see how everything comes together. And it's not really my place to say what those numbers are, but I'm very happy. So
excellent. Well, this was clearly a massive labor of love. Scott and I, as you heard, so before you popped on, Scott and I I had caused some technical difficulties. I gave you the link kind of late. And we didn't know if you were going to be able to get in or not. So Scott and I were just like, I guess we can just talk about how good it is. Because that's
actually, I was going to complain, but
yeah, it's like, damn it, I don't know when he found time to do that. So I'm going to go ahead.
I don't seem very happy about that.
Well, it's beautiful and upsetting. All right, so first off, I'm just going to run some. I'm going to run some of the images. And I'm going to do it this way. So maybe we can all be, there we go. So how did you go about deciding to paint this book? Because I know that it's full color. You wrote and did all the art. Did you do the lettering also?
I did, yeah. I used the Dave Gibbons font. I wanted it, I've been pushing the sort of envelope a bit on all the other levels. So I kind of thought I want something really, really classic. For the font, and I always loved Dave's font, so thanks to him for that. But yeah, I ended up doing the lettering too, which actually I've really enjoyed because it's odd. It's sort of books really come alive when they're lettered. It doesn't feel like the page is finished.
Absolutely.
It goes on.
Well, I mean, I do have a lot of pages to show. I don't want to give everything away, but I do want to just give people a chance to take a look at this stunning artwork. And so, and one of the things Scott and I were talking about earlier is like the storytelling in this is so fascinating because it's such a huge, to give a little bit of spoilers, it's kind of a far-flung space opera, science fiction adventure that has magic. There's Merlin and there's some King Arthur. I mean, you're covering a lot of ground.
Yeah.
There's also my hometown, Walnut Creek, in Mount Diablo is in there. Like, so it's really a far-flung space adventure, right? It's huge. And so some of the art is so epic that it takes a moment to even realize what you're looking at and see how it fits with the dialogue. And I was just wondering, like, how did you write that stuff intentionally? Like, how did you go about creating the synergy between the words and the pictures?
It was, well, I mean, I've talked about it before, but the material itself is material that I've loved for an awful long time. Mm. And originally I wanted to do it just a literal sort of straight up adaptation of Geoffrey of Monmouth, which I hadn't really seen before, certainly not in comic form.
Right.
And I spent a lot of time over many, many years looking at that book and that material. And then I thought, okay, maybe I could incorporate some of the other snippets from other myths, a little bit of the Mallory stuff, and and sort of see how many of the different threads I could pulled together, including like T.H. White's Once and Future King, which is where the whole idea of Merlin coming from the future and dying in the past came from. And the more I thought about it, the more I sort of got myself in a mess, really, because there is so much material there, and it gets very, very convoluted. So really, it was partly my wife, Christina, and Nick Abadzis that sort of said, this stuff is looking really interesting and great, but you should just make it your own and not try to tell somebody else's story. Why don't you tell your story and come up with something new? And one of the things I've been sort of wrestling with is I love the idea of it having a deep sort of Camelot 3000 future vibe to it, as well as having the 5th century stuff. So I didn't want to lose the 5th century stuff too. So then it became like, is this a weird reimagining of that? Which of course I couldn't do because that's not my property. So, but still, you know, there's so much space with this stuff to play that I just sort of thought, okay, what I need is a voice that is more contemporary, because it was either going to be far too hardcore science fiction, or it was going to be too sort of ponderous fantasy. And I didn't really want it to be either of them. So again, you know, with Nick and my wife's suggestion, it was like, okay, let me rethink this, and I need some contemporary characters. Amber sort of popped into my head almost fully formed, weirdly. And that happens oddly when you're creating stuff. It happened in my novel God Killers, a character just like, I was struggling, and suddenly the solution popped up in the form of a character sort of fully formed, and just, you know, they take sort of flight all by themselves, which is always really fascinating part of the creative process to me.
I love that. I love that. Whenever that happens, you always feel like, oh, it's almost like a signpost that you're on you're on the right road. You're like, oh, okay, I am doing the right thing. I'm heading in the right direction, because this gift is just sitting here.
Now, speaking about how the story all came together, though, for the people that don't know yet or haven't seen all of the promo material, Liam, can you give them that 1-minute elevator pitch or something to tell them what this book's about?
Well, it's
it's a tough one.
I know we created the most ridiculous, convoluted, epic, massive sandpit world to play in. So it's basically, in the deep future, we as humans find the remnants of life on a planet that's in the Goldilocks zone that has had organic life, but the organic life's been wiped out. And the astronauts that land there wake this ancient AI up, and it's not pleased, and it proceeds to decide to wipe out all the rest of anything organic, basically. So humanity is suddenly under threat from this AI. The future foundation of the humanity, I guess, the Great Expanse. They have this Queen character who is plugged into everything. So it's happening on 3 different levels. It's happening on a sort of a metaphysical level, a science level, of like a money universe level, binary level is a computer level, and it's also happening in the physical world. And she's sort of plugged into everything, and there's magic in the future at this point, and she realizes that magic is vanishing, and that her soldiers, who are called the Knights of the Veld, are disappearing, and then just cease to have ever existed. And nobody else is aware of that, but she is. And so she decides to send Merlin back through time. He's not the first. There's been a whole bunch before him, but he's a final only child left. She sends him back to find out what's happening to magic, what's ending it, what's finishing it, and what's destroying those timelines. And what we find out is that it's the robots from the AI that are being sent back through time to eliminate magic, because that's the only thing that they can not compute. You know, they can't stay up. So that's my 3-line, very, very simple that I've completely nailed down.
Right. Well, one of the things.
So it's basically Terminator meets Excalibur via Doctor Who is probably the best and simplest way to put it.
I think
Cool.
that, yeah, it's definitely, it spans. One of the things I love about the way you've constructed it is that you start us off in the past and give us an incredible flavor of, I just want to go, I'm going to go show, well, actually you start here, which is kind of like, looks like everything kind of together. And then the expanse of space, and then you open with this beautiful page. And I just wanted to show, I just wanted to go into, I don't want to give away, like, I don't want to give any spoilers, but I do think that the way you've layered the past with the future, and then your main characters are in the present. So the point of view, the narration is the girl who's kind of in today. And so,
Yes.
and what I love about that is like we are getting her perspective from her being a girl in this moment that doesn't actually know what's going on in the past or the future, but has access to all this information. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the interesting things that is, I don't know if you meant to do this, though I'm assuming you did, is the theme of magic and science having like a simultaneous existence in space and time. And you mentioned Einstein a lot. And so the idea that there is a link and that there is a simultaneity going on between not just space and time, but like time and time. So I thought, I mean, it's a pretty, I mean, not only the image is gorgeous, but if you stop and savor what's happening in the story, it's pretty deep stuff.
Well, yeah, I didn't make it easy on myself, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're tackling a lot of heavy themes, and
Yeah.
I think that the weight of it and the expanse of it kind of comes out in the depth of the art. Like everything you do, even a simple tree has this incredible texture. So I wanted to bug you and ask you like a technical question. How did you do that? Like,
I've got a bunch of questions about this stuff.
yeah.
Well, this scene you got up there, that's the elk transforming into a human form, which is,
Mhm.
you know, if you dig into the Merlin stories, there's an awful lot of transformation all the time.
Right.
You know, there's a very deep part of, you know, a lot of those old Celtic myths and the whole human stag combination, particularly the horned god element, the Canunus element. So they're all sort of very buried in it. In terms of the technique, it's something that I actually can't talk about too much, weirdly, because I've got a contract. I'm doing a Domestica course.
Oh, okay.
I'll talk a little bit about it, but I can't go into too much detail because I've kind of sort of signed away my secret.
All right.
But it is, I mean, very, very basically what it is I've created a large, it sounds bonkers, but I've created a large portfolio basically of textures, which are painted and scanned textures and all sorts of different textures. Nothing particularly new there. That's what a lot of Photoshop artists do. And then when I come to the pages, I will quite often just look through the textures and see if anything might look to me like a castle or a woodland scene or a spaceship or anything like that. It's a bit like, I suppose, the whole, you know, they always said Michelangelo would look at a lump of stone and see what he could see in it.
Right,
It's
and
a
he
bit
would
like
he
that.
would carve it out.
Yeah.
He would release it.
Or more simply, it's that game you play with your dad when you're young or your mum, where you do a little scribble on a piece of paper and pass it to the next person, and they see if they can turn it into anything.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like taking that whole Mobius approach of like just making almost subliminal shapes and seeing where they lead. But I've also just been really trying to do digital painting, but in the way that I would paint traditionally, and just approach it the same. So, you know, with thin layers on top of each other of varying transparencies. So it's very sort of traditional in that sense, you know.
It's gorgeous, and right away you have a palette that you slam something like, it's a very cool palette, and then bang, there's the red. Like
yeah, that was sort of a bit of pinching from that point of view game language that I think everyone's kind of got used to now. The whole thing of like, if you've been shot or hit, suddenly the whole world looks red. So that's really pinching a little bit of a new kind of language that we're all becoming familiar with. So, you know, you borrow from wherever you can, really.
Right. So I want to go back, because one of the things that I've found really great about this book is just how personal it is. It's like I've never seen anything like it before. I've been a fan of your work for a very long time. The only thing that it looks like is you. It's 100% Liam. So I'm just very curious about like how much, like, did you plan these images ahead of time? Like, how detailed is your script before you start painting, or are you winging it and letting the feeling dictate what the images are going to be?
The second.
The second?
Yeah.
That's annoying. I mean, so you just, I mean, the other one I understand, because my approach is always very mechanical, and like the emotion is the thing that I always struggle with.
For me, the weird thing is, I know that whenever I have tried to really apply a labored and a thought out and a very draftsman-like approach to my work, it just dies on the page for me, and I could never figure out why. And then I just found that for me, the more I allow accidents to happen, and the less I constrain myself by myself, or sort of basically getting that out of the way of myself,
right?
The more life my work seems to have, and that's been a challenge for me, because I've often found my work, you know, for me at least, has a tendency to get a little bit static and not be shot from particularly interesting angles. The more I work on a figure, for instance, you know, it might have a real crazy dynamism in the first moment, and then I'm working on it. By the time I finished it, it's just a sort of stock pose in a, you know, because I've concentrated so much on the details and the anatomy and everything to try and make it right, that I've killed the energy of it. So I've been trying to sort of deconstruct my approach and not over labor everything, not sort of kill the energy that's there, you know. And that seems to be working for me at this point. It's certainly exciting.
Well, I mean, it'll keep you at the table, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is as well, is while that's true of the art, the story is much more pinned down. So I've been, I say it's been pinned down. I've been chopping it up and moving it around and then pinning it down again, and then, you know, looking at it over and over. I mean, I've just added new elements to the last two scripts today again.
How many issues is this, Liam?
The first book is 6 issues. So I'm working on the last 2 issues. I've found that because the whole thing is one book, I've found that I've been sort of working on 2 issues together and jumping around.
Oh, wow.
Which has sort of been fun. I mean, there's some big things I have to land, and I'm still pushed for time. So it's, you know, you have to sort of pick your fights, really. And I want to get the big beats out and make sure that when we get to the end of issue 6, you know, we're still going to have it's not going to peter out to something that's done crazy fast. It's going to have, you know, the same sort of effort and polish and finish as the earlier issues have.
How long did you spend on that first issue?
Honestly, you know, you asked me right at the beginning about why I'd done it in this style, and the reason, and there's a reason I'm answering, going back to that, is because when I came out of the last 5 issues of Green Lantern and I painted them, and I had so much fun, I found it so liberating, and that was done monthly. And then I went straight into Batman Reptilian, and I kind of cheekily did the first 5 pages in that style, and then sort of went, you know, I hope you don't mind. Oops, you know, I didn't clear this with you. And then kind of went, well, we weren't expecting that, but you know, it suits the book, so let's go for it.
There you go.
So I did Batman Reptilian like that, and I really enjoyed that as well. So I've been pretty close to doing a book a month as per normal on this as I was with anything else, because I've had to jump in and do
Son of a
a little bit of
Wait, stop it.
Yeah.
You just said you painted all of this, these 23 or 24 pages, or whatever it is. You did that in a month.
pretty much, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I know.
I mean-
It's breaking us. He's breaking us over here.
But I mean,
Dude.
really, I had no life, and
For sure.
it went nowhere and did nothing.
But, I mean, that's what it takes.
It's like it's been an obsession. So it's like I've worked really bloody hard on it. I haven't
Yes,
had
you
much
did.
time.
I love that. I love that. I love that spaceship design. By the way, that's just a really cool spaceship.
It sort of replicates the dragon head that we keep seeing populate that's throughout the story. So
that would be one of the white dragon, perhaps. Is the red dragon, the white dragon, and the boar? Are they?
Yeah, it's a little bit more simplified than that. The dragon represents a few of the characters, because as we get in, we hear about some of the earlier version. There's Hengist, who's one of the Welsh chieftains that sort of sided with the Saxons and was not a particularly great character. He was sort of held. He was one of the dragons at one point, and then there's Uther himself was a Pendragon. That was the whole thing, and then the boar is the boar of Cornwall. We know that's Arthur, so that they're the real things. But in this too, I wasn't going to say, but I will. Amber is kind of the dragon too,
Right.
and there's a reason for that. That will, over the very, very long form of the story, reveal itself.
Fantastic.
I think I saw one panel that might have hinted at her. That future stuff for her.
Yeah, there's she's got a massive story, and Daryl's got a huge story as well. It's a big old adventure, I'm excited too, because originally
Was it this one? Sorry.
There could be.
I want to say that her eye there was what caught me.
Oh right, I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, the whole thing there about she's there's a powers awakening within her for sure, and the whole thing with the black and white in the present era is because of a tragedy that's happened to her, and her world's become very black and white, and Daryl coming into her life is bringing little hints of color back into it. So it sort of heats up and then it cools down again. But it also quite like the idea of the, to throw in a couple of old references, the Wizard of Oz, and also like A Matter of Life and Death, that idea of like whether it's an afterlife or the future or the past or magical realms being sort of other. So it was just a way to sort of create like a gap between the future and the past as well.
Right.
Gets absorbed into it.
You totally. There is great separation between the timelines. It's very clear. Almost the style, like the way you break down a page, the choices that you make. It seems like the colors for sure, but then also the composition seem a little bit more. Each timeline has its own little flavor.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I tried to make well, as you see, with the future stuff, I tried to make it a little bit sort of more architectural with some of the layouts, and there's sort of those kinds of interesting shapes to it, unfolding of shapes.
Right.
This page was making me feel like Sid Mead stuff.
Yeah, well, definite influence. Him and John Berkey as well, who I adore, and also Chris Voss, of course.
Oh yeah.
All of those people sort of inform this stuff. And Star Wars. I mean, that's kind of a fair bit of Star Wars in there.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. The Chris Voss stuff. Yeah. God, there's just such great color stuff. I love the spaceship designs, like these guys, like this.
little bug thing.
Yeah, it's super cool.
It's great
Super cool.
sci-fi.
Yeah. And then just they're the kind of almost as though they're underwater floating in their atmosphere.
Yeah. He's an interesting character, Merlin. I didn't want to make him just straightforward in this. He apparently doesn't seem to care that much, but he does underneath. And this relationship he's got with Gwen, who's, not particularly interested in people and has got also her own story. She goes ahead and he goes after her, and what happens there will inform whatever comes next. A huge amount of what next.
Do you have models in mind or people that you are referencing when you do this stuff, or you just have a character type in
not
mind?
for most of them, but for Daryl, yes. Daryl he's based on a very good friend of my son's, also called Daryl. Got his permission, of course. He's super excited. He's a massive comic fan.
Cool.
He's an amazing parkour expert. I mean, just incredible. And he's hopefully, I've got to get him to do but we talked about doing a kind of a photo shoot together for the hardback collected edition, because he's definitely, a big part of this.
Excellent.
Cool.
But yeah, it's like I was just creating the character and my son just said, "Oh, that's Daryl." And I remembered that like years ago when he'd been over to our house when he was a kid, and he was like, he just is a massive comic fan and always wanted to be in a comic. And it's like, why don't you just make it Daryl? And my son sort of talked me into it, and I got in touch with him through Daryl, and we just, he's been really cool. I mean, these pictures were based on very young photos of him, and now he's much older. He's the dreaded version with the beard. That's what he looks like now. Which
that's funny.
Issue
Which
2.
he shows up a little bit. He shows up in the next issue.
Yeah. So he's a very cool character, and he has a crazy epic story. There's a sequence I've done in issue 4, which is almost like a treasury edition, old-fashioned style, black and white with the dot matrix patterns on.
Oh wow!
Coloring it, and I've just completely sort of thrown that style into it. Because
Excellent.
It's all to do with Amber processes through our art, which becomes a part as well. And that when I was doing those pages, I was thinking, oh man, I just really want to do like a giant treasury edition, 40-page, or 60-page, like the old, Red Nails kind of, or any of those big treasury editions.
Yeah.
I sort of had a complete fantasy about doing Daryl's backstory as a one-off separate.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
It's completely ridiculous, I have no idea if it's. I suppose you just do it in both formats, wouldn't you? You do like the regular comic format for those collectors, and then if you can get enough interest, you run a Kickstarter and see if we can,
I know. I'll get the big edition. I love those.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Well, I kind of feel like I want to do it for myself. So maybe when I come to tell his story fully,
right,
that'll be something we do. But I think, what's really exciting is it looks like we've got enough orders that I will definitely be able to come back and do a second series.
That's fantastic.
And I'm so thrilled because really I'd like to. I'd say about ongoing. I suppose what my real plan is, dream would be to do sort of 8 issues of this a year and have 4 months to do like maybe one shots of other stuff just to take a break. So you guarantee the audience like eight issues a year,
right?
Something
that
like
would be
that.
incredible.
Yeah, you're certainly delivering on a crazy level. And one of the things I just wanted to I know I've just been putting the images on the background. They're so glorious, and there is an order, but I don't want to give spoilers necessarily. But like, I did love the symbolism of the fish coming out of this guy's mouth. And I love the way that you were able to handle the under, like there's it feels like there's a correlation between the spaceship atmosphere and then the underwater atmosphere and the way you handle light. They all kind of blend together. And at some point, like I'm like, is this the future? Is this the past? Is this like where are we? They're kind of overlapping here. I love the layers that you're putting in, both thematically and artistically.
Thank you. That this whole sequence doesn't really get explained until issue 6, and then it'll all make sense.
I figured you didn't do that by accident.
No. But I love the transformative stuff. You know, again, it's that mythology of Merlin being a carp and being a deer and being all of these different things. You know,
right?
Why and wanting to put those elements in. But trying to find a new way to do it.
Right. Have you ever read A. Anastasio's work?
I haven't. It's funny. There was a point some years ago where I just thought I don't want. The more you keep reading other people's sort of takes on this kind of material, the more you kind of go, I wanted to do that, or I wanted to do that. So I just, I'm not going to read I'm not going to read any sort of other people's interpretations of the myth, just so that if there is crossover, it's genuinely accidental.
Right. It's just it's clean. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's based on the source material. It's not based on anything else. Obviously, there's a lot of nods to cultural references all the way through it. So I'm already doing that, but I didn't want to be ripping off other creators who are working with this material, really.
Right.
You know.
Well, I mean, this material has had so many versions. It's been approached in so many different directions, and I think that your take on it is unique, and it's a fresh flavor of
Thank you.
Yeah, the myths that have been around for a long time.
That's what I was afraid of, was that I was going to come out with it. It's like, it's all been done before.
Right. Well, I mean, it's such a great story, and it does have so much. There is so much myth and mystery, I think, around the story it's ripe for interpretation.
There's definitely room. I think when you come into mythology and any kind of material like that, it's just ripe for plucking, really, and having fun. But I did want to try and really push that and not be obvious about it, not just because it's easy to just completely rewrite the story in a future setting. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have fun with it and to reference other kind of lost legends and things people didn't know. I mean, some of the stuff that I've just sort of been refreshing myself about again today at Geoffrey of Monmouth, about what Arthur did in his story, and what we're going to see some of in the last 2 issues, is absolutely epic. and it's not in any of the films, and it's not in any of the versions you imagine for Arthur. He really was this kind of, in the Monmouth version, this kind of crazy conquering hero who was like, he was like an Alexander type character, not what we imagine, that he's just sort of stuck in England being a king and defending it and sending his men off to look for the Grail. The earlier versions sort of far more interesting and far more epic, and you never ever hear about it. So it's going to be fun alluding to that. But again, the problem, well, not really a problem, but the decision I made was that I didn't want it to be all about Arthur, and I didn't want it to be his story. I wanted it to be Amber's story. So it gets us into this universe and this world, but in the process, I've got to tell some of these stories because they're just too good.
Are you going to be bringing in one of the things I noticed about Merlin's mother? See if I can find a shot. And I mean, maybe I'm looking too much into it. But one of the things that I liked at the way you did her eyes, almost like a Cylon angles, different. The lights changed. They're vertical and perpendicular. But there's this one shot here where the light in her eye looks to me like Excalibur.
Yes, well, there's all those tiny little, you know.
It's just, I just thought, I mean, I'm just guessing, but I saw that. I'm like, that is cool. Yeah.
There's a lot of little nods here and there all over the place, and little things that I've bedded in. And again, it's part of it is with anything like this where it's based on quite a lot of research.
Mhm.
It should be fun for people to read it who haven't got that knowledge, and it doesn't matter. It should still be accessible.
Right.
But I hope that for the people who really know the stuff, they'll get a few kind of wry nods and smiles, you know, to themselves, and be like, I know where he got that one, or I recognize that reference, or
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, there's like, for instance, there's a bit in Geoffrey of Monmouth where Arthur fights a giant. So he will be fighting a giant, but it won't be a giant in the sense that Monmouth makes it. It'll be a very different kind of a giant.
Very, very cool.
Nice.
So there's a lot of, as part of one of the layers, there's a lot of geometries going on in the book. In this, not only in the science fiction, but also on that in that timeline, but just in some of your compositions and just some of your graphic designs. When you were planning the book and using Stonehenge and Starhenge, like, were you planning to use some of these classic geometries, these mythical geometries, as part of the storytelling devices?
Well, what you've spotted is it became intentional in the process. It wasn't immediately intentional, but it was seeing things for like maps of Stonehenge as seen from above, from like the 17th century and 16th century and stuff like that. Partly, I remember you probably, you know, there's a little nod to the time map from the Time Bandits.
Yep. I saw that. I love that.
Right. And it's all of those kinds of references to those, like, what would a map of time look like?
Right.
And then mapped, you know, and then Stonehenge being sort of incorporated into that, and then all of these geometries, as you say, that sort of then became a big theme of it. It's something that, you know, when that kind of science and time travel happens, or something that's future science, we tend to see those geometries recur. And that's why I brought it onto the cover in the end, for this very specific reason you mentioned. I wanted it to just have this sort of consistent feel of like, we're in there's a map to all of this. There's some sort of sense to all of it if you're
right.
If you're looking.
Well,
again,
there's smoke and mirrors, right? Well, except that it's all there, like it's all part of the same puzzle, right? The past, the future, the present, the metaverse, I forget how you phrase it, the thought vortices. There's the robot realm, the binary, and then the magical. Like, they're all on the same map, just different overlays. And especially if you think of it as being a fourth dimensional map, it starts to have more interconnectivity.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, it's timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah. Do you feel that you're the English sci-fi, the Doctor Who sci-fi has more time travel, has more fluidity to it than American sci-fi?
I don't know. I love American sci-fi. You know, I kind of grew up with Heinlein and Number of the Beast and all of those kinds of like multi-dimensional time traveling kind of sagas. So, you know, thinking about it, Heinlein probably informed that, you know, to some extent. That seems like likely to have been buried in there. Then, you know, obviously there's some great time loop movies that have come out of America. So I think we can spend a lot of time trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and I'm trying not to be too sort of laboriously, you can drive yourself absolutely mad and never even begin telling the story if you try to give yourself too many rules.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is one of the hazards of whenever you're world building. I have not only created and drawn myself into a corner, I've created and drawn myself into a hole that I can't get out of.
A cage.
Right, because I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense, right? But there's on some level, none of it makes sense. It's a story. It's fiction. So it's good to have the rules and a structure, but it's bad to get shackled by them.
Yeah, I think so. So. And you've got, this is a fiction. It's meant to be fun.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not trying to write, a theory on time.
Right. That would actually take you a lot longer than a month per issue, I bet.
A little bit. So, it's playing with the conceits of it, but it's, whether it's right or wrong is kind of irrelevant. It's whether it feels right or wrong. I'm acknowledging all the way through that. Jeff, I know you've read the first three, I think. There's a whole section where we're talking about the building of Stonehenge. And,
right.
And, Amber's clearly incredulous and just going, this is bullshit. This is not how it was built or why.
Right.
But, for the sake of argument, and because I've got no one else, this person was actually there. I haven't really got a leg to stand on, it doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. This is what he said. He's mad, but, so, and I think the whole story sort of works a bit like that, really. It's like, enjoy it, go along with the ride, enjoy it. There's enough to hang a coat on.
Absolutely. Totally. Well, and I just wanted to quickly take a look at, to highlight this particular page again, because this is, I think, a great example of something that you do throughout at least I've only seen the first three issues so far, and they're amazing. But one of the things that you do is that you whiplash the viewer from these grandiose, gigantic scale images down to a real cool close up. Like you go, you jump back and forth, and I definitely think that it gives I think there's an emotional ride that kind of storytelling takes you on, and so I'm fascinated. Yeah, I would, and so I just love this one in particular. It gives you this gigantic scale, and your words are telling the story, and then we jump into one of just the cool ass nights, and then you do this horrible thing to us. You tell us that they're gone. You're like, well, what? I want to see more of that guy. Where's that guy?
Well, that's something I kind of learned off Grant.
Yeah.
The way he'll take a big story and boil it down into 2 panels, and you're like, what? That could have been an entire miniseries in itself. And there's nothing to say that it won't be a big story when we get to it.
Right.
But I have so much to try to explain to the reader in a small space just to set up the world.
Right.
That I didn't have much choice but to kind of really bang through it.
Yeah, well, no, I mean it's an epic ride, and I think it's one of the things I think that have happened in comics in the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years is with the loss of narration. I think that it's become much more about watching a facsimile of a TV show or a movie, whereas I think comics are better served when you have the words and the pictures working together to tell two different parts of the same story. And I think that your narrator does a great job of that.
Thank you. I like to read a story, as well as see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know I'm guilty of info dumps in this and telling as well as breaking all the rules,
Right.
It's I'm aware of them, and you can drive yourself mad trying to figure out how to tell a story like this without captions and just by keeping you along for the ride with the main characters. And it probably could have been done, but I think it would have had to have been done in a much, much longer form approach.
Right.
And I think that would have, for a start, taken me more years than I actually have left. Even
Right.
if I live another 30 or 40. But I also just think it would have been a very, very different beast.
Right.
And I wanted us to enjoy the ideas and just to get wrapped up in this world and get on the journey. And I think the nice thing about Amber telling the story is that it gives it a little bit more of a contemporary edge. I'm in my mid-50s nearly. My children are what informed this in terms of the way they speak and how they sound and how they interact, and how they interact with me, and in that sense, how they'll interact with Merlin at some point. But also their very savvy awareness of a huge array of sort of geek and nerd culture,
Right.
It's just part of their life in a way that they have no kind of bones about. They're not. We used to be like you remember when we were young back whenever, but I remember like in the 70s and 80s, there were places where you wouldn't tell anyone that you read comics.
Right.
Or that you liked Doctor Who, or that you watched Thunderbirds, or any number of things like that. You just would not do it because it was deeply uncool and you'd be frowned upon. And you definitely wouldn't tell people you listen to prog rock, And now the kids are also, I love the fact that my kids know. I'll put Yes on, and they'll hum along. They'll know the beats, and they'll know the words, and they'll put on their playlist. They'll put Rush on and ELO, and and all of these things that were sort of deeply uncool in the 80s. They're kind of like they're just owning with no shame and no sense of that at all. And that's just great for me. I think it's like, in that sense, it's much more fun being, into all of this stuff now, because it's not this sort of weird, solitary, stuck in your bedroom pursuit anymore. It's
right. Well, what I love about what you just said is the piece that I was not really getting until just now is like there is a Yes, an ELO, and prog rock kind of background music to the art, right? Like this definitely has some Yes album cover, Roger Dean kind of feel to the artwork.
Yeah, I'm old enough not to care anymore, and I fully own.
But not care, I think that's great.
I do not care. I'm a full-on prog head, and I love it. And I listen to Gentle Giant till the cows come home, and I don't care.
Oh, yeah, it's the best. It's definitely the best.
But it is funny how our music and every other aspect of what we enjoy around us can inform the books we make or the art ourselves as it comes through us.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, and the thing is as well. It's like, for me, I don't care what you're interested in, and I'm in. It's not just prog. I listen to, contemporary music, and I'll be interested. The kids play some really cool music to me sometimes, and stuff I've never heard of and never would hear if they didn't put it on the playlist. Mm-hmm. Especially weirdly in these COVID times, we were all locked down. We have this thing in England. I don't know if you've come across it. It's called Desert Island Disc, and they'll get celebrities on the radio, and they will pick their 7 favorite. If they were trapped on an island, and they had to pick 7 tracks.
Jeff used to play this game with comics.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. If you could take one trade paperback, what would it be?
Right.
For a long time, for me, it was George Perez, Crisis on Infinite Earth. I'm like, well, if I just have Crisis, I have basically every kind of comic that I want to read.
That's a really good. I'll have to think about that one. I'd have to put spend some time with that.
It's tough whittling it down to one thing.
Yeah, it is. Because when I think about that, I think the comic that I know I've got most copies of is Red Nails, Barry Smith.
That's a great one.
I've got like every version. I've got the big giant size art, the Art Treasury one. I've got the recolored Dark Horse one,
Right.
and the original, the original one when it came out. I've got like 4 or 5 different versions of it. But would it be that one? I don't know if it would, because it is only one story.
Scott,
So
did you just pull it off your shelf?
Of course.
Yeah.
I think this has red nails in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
the one. Yeah,
Yes.
That's the one.
the very one I'm referring to.
I have that over here too.
The treasure is the one that Barry colored for the first time, right?
Well,
I think
we're
so.
We're talking about this one here.
Wait, you got mine?
Wait, hang on a second. I think I have it too.
Wait, there you go. Let's get the trifecta.
Oh, I don't have. Oh, wait. You mean this one? Is this the one you guys were talking
Oh,
about?
this one.
Birds of a
Never
feather.
far from hen, right?
What I love is like we all just reached over and grabbed it.
It was just there.
That's
It's just there.
fantastic. Well,
It is, yeah.
I guess we are all of an age.
That was beautiful.
We all
That's a
just joined a
beautiful
club
one.
or something. I don't know.
Thank you, Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah, you've done us all a huge favor. Oh, that's amazing. So I had one last question that I wanted to I loved this image so much. And even though that's not what Stonehenge looks like now, when I went to visit it, and that's definitely what it feels like.
Yeah, it's a funny place. I confess, and again, in the issue where Amber gets to Stonehenge, she's slightly disappointed by it. Now, I haven't been since I was about, 20, something like that, 19, 20. I haven't been back for for years. We occasionally would drive past it on the way down to Devon. But I remember at the time, and it might have been the wrong circumstances or whatever, but I was really disappointed because it just felt like, they know exactly where it's from, what it did. And, you couldn't get anywhere near it. And the paths around it kind of spoilt it. And you see the pictures of it out in the field. And I had a romantic notion that you could wander across a field and it would just be there, in the middle of nowhere, like on the moors, like it's some sort of bleak space far away from civilization, which of course it isn't. It's got a giant big road either side of it, and a tunnel underneath the road, and paths and ropes, and all of these kinds of things. And it kind of spoilt it for me because I had this naive fantasy about what I was expecting, and yet it never stops exerting this kind of great meaning somehow over Britain, particularly British culture, British mythology, our sense of identity. And it's culturally significant in lots of ways. Obviously, it's made a huge mockery out of with Spinal Tap.
Sure.
And weirdly too, I was at
the bloody splish splash.
Yeah,
right.
And I was at the Reading Rock Festival where they had the Black Sabbath issue with it was like a big comeback of was it Sabbath or Purple? I'm trying to remember now. It might have been Deep Purple. It was a weird mix of all of them because it had like Bev Bevan on the drums from ELO, Gillan singing. So it was those rock, interconnected family stuff. So it was actually like Electric Deep Sabbath or whatever.
Right.
And they couldn't get the bloody henge to work. It was so they were delayed like an hour and a half, 2 hours coming on. And from what I understand, that was what informed the whole tiny henge.
Oh, that was classic.
And there's a really funny YouTube video as well that my son showed me. It's like, what is the meaning of Stonehenge? And I can't remember the name of the comedians, but it's from some Scandinavia country, and it's hilarious. A massive big rock ballad.
I'll have to look for that one.
I'll try and dig it out and send a post you a link later, but it's very funny. So there's this sort of there's this weird sense of like you've got this wonderful megalithic structure full of romance and mystery and tied inextricably to Merlin and Arthur. And then you've got all the takedowns of it, of the
Right.
cultural and the humorous versions of it. And then you've got the reality of it, which is with the main road either side and all of that kind of thing. And yet there it is, you know, and it like I say, just exerts this sort of deep meaning across this landscape, you know. And I think that was the other thing, because there was a big question about, am I going to be able to pull off a comic called Starhenge? Is that a ridiculous name for a comic?
I thought it was. I mean, did Starhenge pop into your head, or were you working on the whole thing and then that you came to it later? Like, when did you discover that was the title?
It was the Dragon and the Boar. It was the Dragon and the Boar for a long time. But I just felt it needed something, just that kind of tied the two ends of the story together, because ultimately it will be about the Starhenge at some point.
Well, there you go.
And what that is and why it's there. So it was coming up with a word that just sort of nailed it, you know, that nailed the sense of Stonehenge, I guess, you know, that's what I was talking about. And then I had this idea of like this massive kind of technological version of Stonehenge, a vast version being built on Mars and being like a kind of crazy Stargate type thing. And I couldn't get that image out of my head, and it just was like, no, it's going to work. I got to stick with that name. That is the thing. It's evocative. It's I mean, yeah, it's Star Wars and it's Excalibur, isn't it?
It is. Well, what I love about the title Starhenge is just one of those things that it's so obvious. It's like, oh, Starhenge, that I'm amazed that no one else has ever done it before.
Well, weirdly, there's a thing called a Tesla Starhenge, which is like a device that you can sit in, a new age device that has been created like by a bunch of hippies that will channel star energy and
really?
make you feel healthy. And that's the literally Tesla Starhenge. And there's been albums. It's one of those words that sort of is out there and has been used, but you know, it's been used many times in different ways, but it's not been used ever as a title for a story. And it's sort of enough of an outlier that it seemed like that's definitely worth grabbing. Obviously, I didn't realize that at the time, but when you have to do your due diligence around sort of copyrights and all of that kind of stuff,
Right.
It turns up everything. Oh my God, there's not a word on the planet that hasn't been copyrighted.
Exactly. It's tough to come up with a truly original title for something.
Yeah.
But
there was another one. There was one that they were trying to build a replica in Nevada, I think, and they called it they were trying to get a Starhenge off the ground as an artwork, a giant art. Would have been really cool, you know. But sadly, that never came to fruition. So that I would have loved to have gone and seen that in Nevada.
Oh, that would have been cool. Yeah. Well, I think that's I don't want to give any more spoilers. People should definitely go get this book. I linked in the description box down below. I linked to Liam, to your websites and to the Image website to order the book. For anyone who hasn't ordered it already. I can't believe anyone's watching the show that hasn't already ordered it. But just in case, anyone who hasn't gotten it should definitely get it. It's amazing. The work is phenomenal. It breaks my heart and makes me upset that you've been doing it every day for a month. It's not fair that it could be so good and so fast, but I'm happy about that. It's a great thing. And I'm really glad that you came on the show to talk to us about it. And I really hope that it's a huge success, because it's gorgeous and I can't wait to read the rest of the issues.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys. It's been I really enjoyed it last time. I I can come back again.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Well,
I'll
we're definitely gonna
see you,
when you put the collection together, we're gonna have a
Oh,
retrospective. Yeah, and then we'll get some music on in the background. Maybe do some drawing next time.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. All right, Liam. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Go get Liam's book and enjoy Starhenge. And with that,
Thanks,
Thank you
Liam.
very much. Take
Great.
care, guys.
all right, take it easy, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
There you go.